August 9th, 2006. Columbus police are in high-speed pursuit of a gray SUV making an illegal U-turn. The driver isn't stopping for traffic lights or sirens. He's driving like he's on a mission, blowing past the cruisers, weaving through traffic, forcing officers to deploy spike strips. When the car finally grinds to a halt on the rims, the driver refuses to exit. Officers rush the vehicle, use mace, and they drag him out. This night just turned from a standard DUI arrest into something much darker. The driver is wearing a bulletproof vest, and in the passenger seat, a loaded AK-47 and 3 handguns. Not to mention an open bottle of Grey Goose. The police run the ID. The man in the vest behind the wheel wasn't a cartel member or even a career criminal. Quite the opposite. Just 3 years earlier, he was one of the most dominant and famous teenagers in the history of college football. This is the story of the cursed prodigy, the man who flew too close to the sun, the rise, the fall, and the impossible return. Maurice Clarett. The name brings up two very different images depending on who you ask. To some, he is the savior of Ohio State, the true freshman who did the impossible. To others, he's probably the biggest what if in the history of the sport. But here's the thing. Usually when a player falls from grace, it's a slow burn, injuries, bad luck, a somewhat gradual decline. But Clarett didn't decline. He flat out vanished. He went from the cover of Sports Illustrated to a prison cell in a timeline that defies logic. Today, we aren't just looking at the rap sheet. We're looking at how the system built a superstar and then watched him self-destruct. Was he a victim of a broken NCAA system, or was he the architect of his own disaster? In 2002, Ohio State football was desperate. They hadn't won a national title in 34 years. Enter Maurice Clarett. He came from Youngstown, Ohio, a rough place that breeds tough players. And from the moment he stepped on campus, he didn't look, play, or run like a freshman. In his first game, he rushed for 175 yards. By the end of the season, he carried the ball 222 times and racked up 1,237 rushing yards, a school record for a freshman. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. It was the violence of his running style. He ran angry. He ran like every yard was a personal insult. And then came the defining moment. The 2003 Fiesta Bowl against the mighty Miami Hurricanes. This play looked innocent enough, a simple turnover. Sean Taylor, one of the greatest safeties to ever play the game, intercepts the ball. It really should have been game over, to be honest. But watch Clarett. He chases down the soon-to-be NFL legend, strips the ball, and recovers it himself. It was the defining, momentum-changing moment of the game. He logged 94 yards and the winning touchdown in that 31-24 double overtime victory. He was the first true freshman to lead a team to a national title since 1985. The city of Columbus treated him like a god. He was 19 years old and had the nation in his hands. But here's the problem. The cracks were already forming, while the fans saw a hero. Behind the scenes, Clarett was already at war with the administration. He publicly complained about not being allowed to fly home for a funeral. And the events that followed that championship game would ensure he never play another down of college football. The fall didn't happen in years. It happened in months. And the pacing of this downfall was relentless. It all started with a car. Shortly after the championship, reports surfaced about Clarett receiving special benefits, specifically a loaner vehicle he couldn't afford, preferential treatment. Then came the academic fraud allegations. The NCAA, as they usually do, often unfairly, dropped the hammer. They launched a massive investigation into academic fraud and improper benefits. Ohio State, terrified of sanctions, suspended their star running back for the entire 2003 season. Most players in this situation have a standard playbook. Take the suspension, apologize, go to class. Come back for your junior year and go play ball. But Maurice Clarett was not most players. Forget apologizing. He decided to go to war, not just against Ohio State, but against the NFL. At the time, the NFL had a strict rule. You had to be 3 years removed from high school to enter the draft. Clarett was only 2 years out. He challenged the league in court, arguing that the rule was a violation of antitrust laws. But here's where the facts versus opinion debate gets heated. Fact: Clarett was physically ready for the NFL. Opinion: the NFL wasn't protecting players with the 3-year rule. They were protecting their free farm system called the NCAA. Incredibly, a federal judge agreed with him. Clarett actually won the initial court ruling. For a brief moment, it looked like he would revolutionize how athletes went pro. He was eligible for the 2004 draft. But the NFL appealed, and the courts turned on him. The result? He was barred from the 2004 draft, and he was kicked out of Ohio State. He was in football purgatory, no team, no structure. And for a kid who grew up in a rough environment, removing the structure of football was a death sentence. He moved to Los Angeles. He started hanging out with rappers and gangsters. He was living the Hollywood life with zero income and zero discipline. The weight was piling on, the anger was building, and the clock was ticking toward the 2005 Combine. By February 2005, he was finally eligible for the draft. But the Maurice Clarett who showed up in Indianapolis wasn't the same explosive weapon from the Fiesta Bowl. He had been out of the game for 2 years, and he showed up heavy and sluggish. The 40-yard dash is the gold standard for running backs. Clarett lined up, he took off, but there was no burst. He ran a 4.72 and a 4.82. For a running back, that is glacial. But it wasn't just the time, it was the attitude. He quit the workout halfway through. He refused to finish the drills. The scouts were horrified. They saw a player who had given up. Yet, the Denver Broncos took a gamble and threw him a lifeline. They drafted him in the 3rd round and gave him a final chance to prove everyone wrong. But here's why this is tragic. He signed a contract with zero guaranteed money, but his demons had already taken over. Reports from camp were a disaster. Supposedly, he was drinking heavily. He was showing up late, and he was arguing with coaches. Before the preseason even ended, the Broncos cut him. The cursed prodigy had officially washed out of the league without ever playing a regular season snap. He turned down a chance to play in NFL Europe. He went home to Columbus. And that is when the bottom fell out. This brings us back to that night in August 2006. After being cut, Clarett didn't go into rehabilitation. He went into the underworld. He was reportedly robbing people outside nightclubs in Columbus. He was spiraling deep into paranoia. He believed people were out to get him. When police tried to pull him over for that illegal U-turn, Clarett floored it. The chase wove through the streets of Columbus, the very same streets where parades were held in his honor just 4 years prior. Officers deployed spike strips, flattening the tires of his SUV. But he kept driving on the rims for miles. When the vehicle finally stopped, Clarett refused to exit and police attempted to use a taser. It didn't work. Why? Because he was wearing a Kevlar vest. It took 4 officers and mace to subdue him. And that's when they found the arsenal. A loaded AK-47, 3 handguns, the vodka. He wasn't just a drunk driver. This was a man prepared for war. Who was he fighting? In his mind, maybe everyone. The NCAA, the NFL, the critics, or maybe just himself. He pled guilty to robbery and carrying a concealed weapon. The judge sentenced him to 7.5 years in prison. The national champion was now inmate number 57912. Maurice Clarett's story is often used as a cautionary tale, a story of arrogance and wasted talent, a story of a system that chews up young black men and spits them out. But here's the real legacy. While he served nearly 4 years in prison, Clarett didn't die there. He read, he studied, he changed, he got out. He started a mental health agency, and he speaks to young athletes about the dangers of the ego and the lack of guidance. He reconnected with Ohio State. He was welcomed back by the university that once banned him. He proved that while the prodigy might have been cursed, the man could still be redeemed. But looking back at the 2002 tapes, you can't help but ask the question, if the rules were different, if the support system was better, just how great could he have been? What's your opinion? Has the NCAA fixed the problems that destroyed Maurice Clarett, or is the system still broken? And with NIL in the picture, are things now worse? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more college football history like this, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.